यमुना तीरा यमुना तीरा Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama Krishna Hare Rama Hare Rama Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Rama Hare Rama Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Rama Hare Rama Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Rama Hare Rama Shri Radha Madhav Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Agyantimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Tinamne Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyamadi Paschatya Dishatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram. Hare Krishna. So, welcome to the Bhagavatam class. This Saturday morning, we are going to discuss the Navi Yogendras. So this year, the monthly Saturday Bhagavatam class series is based on various devotees mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam. And in the 11th canto, we come across the wonderful pastimes and the teachings of the Navi Yogendras. So we'll go to Srimad Bhagavatam, canto 11, chapter 2. So the story and the teachings of the Navi Yogendras are there in Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 11, canto 11, chapters 2, 3, 4, and 5. So let us first discuss who are these Navi Yogendras. So in the purport, in the introduction of chapter 2, in paragraph 4, Srila Prabhupada describes their background. So Brahmaji's son was Swayambhuv Manu, and last year I was fortunate enough to describe some of the glories and teachings of Swayambhuv Manu. And his son was Priyavrat, whose son was Agnidhra, and his son was Nabhi. And Nabhi's son was Lord Rishabdev, an incarnation of the Supreme Lord. So in the 5th canto, we get to read about Lord Rishabdev's teaching. Some of the most beautiful verses of Bhagavatam are found in those teachings, and Prabhupada used to often quote those verses. Now, Lord Rishabdev had 100 sons, and the eldest was King Bharat, on whose name the entire planet was known as Bharatvarsha. Prior to that, it was called Ajanab Varsha. But King Bharat was such an exalted king, and the way he ruled his kingdom, that the whole planet was called Bharatvarsha. And then 9 of the other sons were known as Navi Yogendras, and their names are Kavi, Havir, Antariksh, Prabuddha, Pipalayan, Avirhotra, Drumil, Chamas, and Karbhajan. Then other 9 sons of King Rishabdev, they became Kshatriyas, and they took control of the 9 planets of the earth comprising Bharatvarsha. And 81 other sons became Brahmanas, and they were expert in Smriti doctrines, propagated the path of fruited service, of fruited sacrifice. So the Navi Yogendras are essentially the sons of Lord Rishabdev, an incarnation of the Supreme Lord himself. So what happens is, once upon a time, Narad Muni comes to Dwarka at the home of Vasudeva and Devaki, the parents of Lord Krishna. So King Vasudeva, he worships him very respectfully, and he requests Narad Muni that please tell me about pure devotional service. And Vasudevji regrets. He said that in my previous birth, I worshipped Lord Ananta to beget a son. I could have worshipped him for liberation, but instead I asked for some common benediction. So now you please tell me that how can I get your devotional service, which will free me from all kinds of fear. So Narad Muni, he praises Lord Vasudeva, and he says, you are the father of Lord Krishna, and yet you are asking this question. So in this regard, I will relate to you an ancient conversation between King Nimi, who was the king of Videha, and the Navi Yogendras, who were the sons of Lord Rishabdev. So this is how this conversation begins. So Srimad Bhagavatam is interesting. Suta Goswami is narrating the conversation between Shukdev Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj to the sages of Naimisharanya. And Shukdev Goswami is narrating the conversation of Narad Muni and Vasudeva. And Narad Muni is narrating the conversation of Navi Yogendras, the 9 Yogendras, and King Nimi. So this is the process of disciplic succession. In one conversation, Prabhupada said that the only credit I have is that I have never spoken a word of myself. I've always quoted previous acharyas, and that is actually a credit. In ordinary world, unless someone propounds his own conception, they are not considered scholars. But in spiritual Guru Shishya Parampara, the credit of a devotee is that he only repeats what he has heard from the disciplic chain. And that's how our Puranas are also described. Suta Goswami describing what Shukdev Goswami said, who is describing what Narad Muni said, who is describing what 9 Yogendras had said. So this is our tradition. So King Nimi, he asks 9 questions, one each to the 9 Yogendras. So in this class, we will discuss the 9 questions, and in summary, I'll speak about the answers. Maybe I'll select one verse from each of the Navi Yogendras. So in chapter 2, if we go to text 20 and 21, the characteristics of Navi Yogendras are described. Nava bhavan mahabhaga munayo yartha shamsina shramana vatarasana atma vidya visharada kavir havir antariksha prabuddha pitpalayana avir hotrotha drumila chamasha karabhajana. The 9 remaining sons of Rishabha were greatly fortunate sages who worked vigorously to spread knowledge of the absolute truth. They wandered about naked and were very well versed in spiritual science. Their names were Kavi, Havir, Antariksh, Prabuddha, Pipalayan, Avirhotra, Drumila, Chamas, and Karbhajan. And in the next verse, 22 and also 23, their characteristics are described. Ta ete bhagavad rupam vishvam sad sadatmakam atmano vyatirekena pashyanto vicharantahi. These sages, the Navi Yogendras, they wandered the earth, seeing the entire universe with all its gross and subtle objects as a manifestation of the Supreme Lord and as non-different from the self. Text 23. Avyahatesh Tagataya Surasiddha Sadhya Gandharva Yakshana Kinnaranadanaka Muktascharanti Municharana Bhutanatha Vidyadhara Vijagavam Bhuvana. The 9 Yogendras are liberated souls who travel freely to the planets of demigods, the perfected mystics, the sadhyas, the heavenly musicians, the yakshas, human beings, and minor demigods such as kinnaras and serpents. No mundane force can check their free movement, and exactly as they wish, they can travel to the world of the sages, angels, the ghostly followers of Lord Shiva, Vidyadhar, the Brahmanas, and the cows. So these 9 Yogendras, they were liberated souls. They were devotees of the Supreme Lord. Just like, we know Narad, so Narad Muni, he travels freely everywhere, singing the glories of the Lord. Similarly, these Navi Yogendras, they traveled everywhere freely, describing the glories of the Supreme Lord. And in their travels, they would see both the gross and subtle manifestations of the Supreme, of the universe, as manifestations of the Supreme Lord. So they were all liberated souls. So let us offer our obeisances to them before discussing the teachings. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyo titanam pavanebhyo vaishnavabhyo namo Navi Yogendra ki jai. So King Nimi, he welcomes, he was doing a sacrifice, and at that time, the Navayogendras, they happened to come. So he recognizes from their symptoms that they are all liberated souls. So he gets up from his seat and he welcomes them. And it is said in text 26 that he worshipped them in a proper way, just as one would worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So then King Videha praises them, and he said that I'm really fortunate that I've got association of the devotees of the Lord, because this human life is so rare and also temporary. It can be lost at any point of time. So I'm grateful that in this fractional human life, I've achieved your association. And then he says that, please speak to me about, in text 31, King Nimi raises the first question. So there will be 9 questions in the 4 chapters. And this is the first question, text 31. Dharman bhagavatan bruya yati na shrutaye kshamam ye prasanna prapannaya dasyatyaatmanamapyaja. Please speak about how one engages in the devotional service of the Supreme Lord. If you consider being capable of properly hearing these topics, when a living entity offers loving service to the Supreme Lord, the Lord is immediately satisfied. And in return, he will give even his own self to the surrendered soul. So King Nimi, he is also a very wonderful devotee. He can recognize the Navi Yogendras as devotees and just try to understand how he is humbly asking this question, that if you consider being capable of understanding, then please tell me how one can engage in the devotional service of the Supreme Lord. And why is bhakti important? Why is Dharman Bhagavatam, the science of devotional service? Why does he want to know about it? Because if one has perfected the science of devotional service, the Lord is immediately satisfied and he will give even himself to the surrendered soul. See, in none of the other yogic processes this is possible. In Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Hatha Yoga, you can achieve self-realization, maybe you can achieve the darshan of the super soul. That's it. You are liberated from material miseries. You are self-realized. But the Lord does not give himself to such a yogi. Only to a devotee the Lord gives himself. In fact, in many places, Shri Krishna Chaitanya, he says that if this devotee says that I'm sold, then I'm considered sold. So the Lord is willing to be sold off by his devotee. So devotional service is very special. It is very powerful. It can control even the Supreme Lord. So King Nimi is saying that if you consider that I am able to understand this topic, then please tell me how one can engage in devotional service of the Supreme Lord. So in text 42, the first Navi Yogendra Kavi, he answers this question. And I would read text 42 from all the verses. So he gives a very interesting answer about the process of devotional service. And I'm really sorry, because of time constraints, I won't be able to read all the verses. But from each answer, I'll be selecting one verse. And this verse is very famous, often quoted by Srila Prabhupada in various lectures and conversations. Bhakti pareshan bhavo viraktir anyatra chaistrika ek kala prapadyamanasya yathashnata syus tushki pushki shud apayo anugasam. So there are three things here: devotion, bhakti, then paresh anubhava, direct experience of the Supreme Lord, and virakti, detachment from other things. These three things occur simultaneously for one who has taken shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And an example is given in the same way that tushti, satisfaction, pushti, nourishment, shud apaya, eradication of hunger, come simultaneously and increasingly with each bite for a person engaged in eating. Now, this verse is very important to understand the process of devotional service. Often devotees ask that, Prabhuji, what is how do I become advanced in devotional service? How do I understand it? When will I see the Supreme Lord? When will I become detached from material things? When will I get devotion? So the example is given is that when a person is hungry and he is given food, then he gets three things. He gets, first of all, pushti. Tushti. Tushti means satisfaction. He's hungry, he's getting food, so he becomes satisfied that, okay, I've got some food now. There is a sensation of satisfaction. As soon as we eat food, we become satisfied. The hunger goes down. So there is some satisfaction there. And this is a personal experience. The next is pushti. We become nourished. The body absorbs all the nutritions and we get a flow of energy. We become nourished. And shuddhapaya, the hunger pangs, they go down. Now, if you observe this, after the class, I'm sure all of you will be taking prasadam, and you can experience it then, that these three things happen simultaneously. As soon as you take a morsel, it's not that first you become satisfied, then your hunger pangs go away, then your energy, it all happens simultaneously. Even with the first bite, you become happy, your energy increases, and your hunger starts to reduce. So similarly, in the process of devotional service, as soon as, and again, you can notice this in your personal experience, that as soon as you started coming to the temple associated with devotees, started chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, then automatically your interest in devotional service increased. You started becoming detached from material activities. Once you start coming to the temple, your materialistic friends and activities, you're no longer interested in them. They seem very dull. And you also realize the Supreme Lord in various ways, in various small ways. You start realizing the presence of the Supreme Lord in your life, in various things, in the material creation. Your whole perspective changes. So it happens simultaneously. It's so in the purport, if we go to paragraph 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, in paragraph 5, Prabhupada quotes, according to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, the path of Bhakti Yoga is so joyful and practical that even in the stage of sadhana bhakti, in which one follows rules and regulations without an advanced understanding, one can perceive the ultimate result. So even in a neophyte stage, the whole process is so joyful and practical that one can perceive the ultimate result. We may not have seen Krishna directly, but we can perceive that, yes, if I follow this process, then I will attain success. So the process of devotional service is therefore considered supreme. I would very humbly request all the devotees to read this purport, because in this purport, Prabhupada has quoted Jiva Goswami, Rupa Goswami, and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. And he has made his own comments where he says in the last sentence, if one surrenders to Krishna, one is immediately liberated and thus begins his career as a transcendental devotee with complete confidence in the Lord's protection. So as soon as you surrender to Krishna, you are immediately liberated. Gaurang Prabhu once gave this example when we were medical students, that as soon as we enter into medical college, then it is assumed that we will be doctors. It's only a matter of time before we get the certificate. So similarly, as soon as you start to practice devotional service, then Prabhupada says you are immediately liberated, straight away. And it's only a matter of time before you achieve the supreme result of total surrender to Krishna, of devotional service, of the perfection of devotional service, which is Krishna Prem, love of God. So this process is so wonderful. So this is what Kavi Maharaj, he tells to King Nimi about the process of devotional service. We will then go to text 44, where King Nimi raises the second question. He says, Shri Rajo Vach, Ata Bhagavatam Brutam, Yad Dharmo Yadrishon Rinam, Yatha Charati Yad Brute, Yerlinger Bhagavat Priya. So he wants to know about the symptoms of the devotees of the Supreme Lord. What are the natural symptoms by which I can distinguish between the most advanced devotee, middle, and neophyte devotees? So this is often, again, very widely quoted. We want to know at which stage we are in devotional service. Whether we are still a neophyte, or have we become a second-class devotee, or are we now, Paramhamsas? So here, Havir, the second Navi Yogendra, he gives us clear benchmark. So text 45, 46, and 47, I will just read the translations. So the most advanced devotee, the first class devotee, he sees within everything the soul of all souls, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna, Consequently, he sees everything in relation to the Supreme Lord and understands that everything that exists is eternally situated within the Lord. So the first class devotee has no material vision. He sees everything in connection with the Supreme Lord. So Prabhupada once said that, therefore, such a devotee finds it difficult to preach because he sees everyone as devotees of Krishna. He sees everyone as energies of Krishna. So he thinks, everyone is a devotee. So there's no need of preaching. So often the first class devotee will come to the second class in order to preach. But if this is a benchmark, if you can see everything in connection with the Supreme Lord, and you see within everything Shri Krishna, then you can say, okay, I'm now an advanced devotee. Text 46, an intermediate or second class devotee called Madhyam Adhikari. So the first class is called Uttam Adhikari. This is Madhyam Adhikari. He offers his love to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is a sincere friend to devotees of the Lord, shows mercy to ignorant people who are innocent, and disregard those who are envious of the Supreme Personality of God. So the second class devotee makes some distinctions. To the Supreme Lord, he offers his love and devotion. To the devotees of the Lord, he is a very sincere friend. He tries to serve them. To ignorant people who are innocent, he shows mercy by preaching to them the message of Krishna consciousness. But those who are envious, he stays at a distance. So this is an ideal preacher. And in Madhur Kanamini, Shri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that only a second class devotee is able to give the mercy of Krishna. He is able to impart that mercy and devotional service of Krishna. Because first class devotee, he does not see anyone as a non-devotee. And third class or a Kanishta Adhikari, he has no power to give devotional service. So second class devotee is the most important for us. If we want to advance in devotional service, we have to serve such a devotee who can give us devotional service. And a Kanishta Adhikari or the lower class devotee, Prakrut Bhakt, text 47, a devotee who faithfully engages in the worship of the deity in the temple, but does not behave properly towards other devotees or people in general is called Prakrut Bhakt, a materialistic devotee, and is considered to be in the lowest position. So he has some knowledge that the deity is the Supreme Lord and I should worship the deity. But when it comes to the living entities, to the devotees of the Lord, he does not behave properly. He thinks that he is superior and they are inferior. So he still has a materialistic ego. And therefore he is called Kanishta or Prakrut, of a lower standard. But he is still a bhakta. He is still a devotee. We should still offer our respects to him because he has started the process. He is now worshipping the deity of the Lord and is beginning to make advancement. And by that process, we know from the first Navi Yogendra, Kavi Maharaj, that such a devotee will be guaranteed success. So we should at least be Kanishta Adhikari. We should not remain on a material standard and try to progress towards higher stages. But these three verses will tell us about the various class of devotees. We should always aspire to take guidance and shelter of second and first class devotees and try to serve them, and that will ensure that we can advance in devotional service. But even if someone is of a lower class, we should always offer respect and not offend any devotee. So these are the different class of devotees. So we'll go to the next chapter now, chapter 3, where in the first verse, in this chapter, there are 4 questions. So King Nimi in text 1, he says, Shri Rajo Vaj, Parasya Vishnu Ishasya Mainam Api Mohini Mayam Veditum Ichhamo Bhagavanto Bruvantuna. King Nimi said, now we wish to learn about the illusory potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Shri Vishnu, which bewilders even great mystics. My lords, please speak to us about this subject. So this is very interesting. I've seen in all the, whenever all the devotees in Srimad Bhagavatam, when they glorify the Supreme Lord or they ask about the Supreme Lord, they always want to know about the Maya potency of the Lord. Sometimes some people, they like to rush into the Ras Leela pastimes of the Lord. But that is artificial. A true devotee of the Lord, he wants to understand the basics. He wants to be very clear about this Maya potency of the Lord. We are so much covered by this illusory potency that unless we understand and come out of this illusory potency, there is no question of progress. We are so much diseased that it's important to know what is the disease and the cure for it. So King Nimi, he wants to know about the Maya potency. And from verses 2 till 16, the third Navi Yogendra, Antariksh Maharaj, he responds to this answer. So Shri Antariksh Uvacha, text 3. Ebir Bhutani Bhutatma Mahabhuter Mahabhuja Sarjo Chapachanyadya Swamatratma Prasiddhe. Shri Antariksh said, O mighty armed king, by activating the material elements, the primeval soul of all creation has sent forth all living beings in higher and lower species, so that these conditioned souls can cultivate either sense gratification or ultimate liberation according to their desire. So this is the reason why Maya exists. That because we have a desire of bhoga, the Lord creates this material world. We want to enjoy separately from the Lord. So the Lord says, well, this is not possible, but if you want to dream that way, then I'll create this dreamy situation called. So in this verse, there are two things mentioned. Sense gratification or liberation. When the living entities want to enjoy separately from the Lord, they are given the shelter of mind. But when one is frustrated, then one wants to get out of mind, which is liberation. But actually both bhoga and tyag are considered reprehensible for the devotees. The devotee is not interested in both of them. For a devotee, both bhoga and moksha are equally disgusting. He just wants to engage in the service of the Supreme Lord. So in Bhagavatam, the Maya Shakti of the Lord, or the process of how the Maya engulfs the living entity, the process of creation is described throughout Bhagavatam, especially in Canto 2 and 3. And if you want to understand a summary, then the verses from 3 till 16, the response of Antariksh, that will be a summary. So I would again request you to read this section to understand how the Lord creates this material universe through the medium of his Maya Shakti. So going on to the next question, which is text 17. King Nimi said, O great sage, please explain how even a foolish materialist can easily cross over the illusory energy of the Supreme Lord, which is always insurmountable for those who are not self-controlled. So after understanding Maya Shakti, King Nimi wants to know, so okay, I am a great foolish materialist. How such a person can cross over this Maya Shakti of the Lord? Because if one is not self-controlled, he will always be under the influence of Bhoga and Tyag. So how do I cross it? So the next Navi Yogendras, Sri Prabuddha, he gives a very interesting answer about surrender to the spiritual master, and how by practicing devotional service one can come out of this material conditioning. So I would read one verse from this answer, which is text 21. Tasmad gurum prapadyeta jigyasu shreya uttamam shabde pare chanishnatam brahmanya upashamashrayam. Again, a very widely quoted verse by Srila Prabhupada and various devotees. Tasmad gurum prapadyeta jigyasu shreya uttamam. Therefore, any person who seriously desires real happiness must seek a bona fide spiritual master and take shelter of him by initiation. The qualification of the bona fide guru is that he has realized the conclusion of the scriptures by deliberation and is able to convince others of these conclusions. Such great personalities who have taken shelter of the Supreme Lord, leaving aside all material considerations, should be understood to be bona fide spiritual masters. So the process of initiation, the qualifications of guru and disciple are mentioned in this verse. And this verse it gives a command, a direction. Prapadyeta, one should take shelter of. Tasmad gurum prapadyeta. It is an instruction that if one wants to get out of the clutches of Maya, one has to take shelter of a guru. Jigyasu Shreya Uttamam, and not just be a foolish, blind disciple. One should inquire about the highest goal of life. And why? Because your guru is such that Shabde Parecha Nishnatan, he's perfectly knowledgeable of all the scriptures of the Vedas. He knows about Brahmani, he knows about the Supreme Lord, and Upasham Ashraya, he has controlled his material sense gratification. So this is the qualification of a guru, and therefore, if one is serious about coming out of Maya, one should take shelter of such a guru and engage in devotional process. So just to recap, the first question was about devotional service, and Shri Kavi, he answers that question by explaining the process of devotional service, and we discussed the verse of how Bhakti Pareshanu Bhavo Nitra, that one can experience devotion, perception of the Supreme Lord, and detachment simultaneously. Just as when we eat food, we get tushti, pushti, shuddhapaya. We get satisfaction, nourishment, and freedom from food. Second question was, what are the three types of devotees? And Havir Navi Yogendras, he answers that question. Third question was about Maya Shakti, where Antariksh Prabhu, he explains the process of creation. And here, the fourth question was how a foolish person can cross Maya. And Sri Prabuddha Dev, one of the 9 Yogendras, he answers that by taking shelter of a bona fide guru and engaging in devotional service, one can cross over Maya Shakti of them. Okay. All right. So, same chapter, text 34. King Nimi, he now asks another question. King Nimi inquired Please explain to me the transcendental situation of the Supreme Lord Narayan, who is himself the absolute truth and the super soul of everyone. You can explain this to me because you are all most expert in transcendental knowledge. So the fifth question is, please explain to me the transcendental situation of the Supreme Lord Narayan. So after understanding Maya and the process of how to get out of it, now King Nimi wants to know Narayana Abhidhanasya, the situation of the Supreme Lord Narayan. So Pippalayan, the next Navi Yogendra, he answers this in text 35. So let's just go to text 35. Shri Pippalayan Uvacha Sthit Udbhava Pralaya Heturasya Yat Sapnaja Garshasu Shusupteshu Sabbahischa Dehendriya Suridaya Nicharanti Yena Sanjivita Tadavehi Param Narendra. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the cause of creation, maintenance, and destruction of this universe. Yet he has no prior cause. Sometimes people say that if God created everything, who created God? But that question itself is influenced by the conceptions of space, time, and creation. The spiritual world has no such conceptions of space, time, or creation. And it is difficult for us to understand because we are like frogs in a well. All we know is how big the well is. We cannot understand the ocean. So because in this world, we see everything is created, maintained, and destroyed. So similarly, we think, oh, the Lord Narayan must be created. But that's not the case. He has no prior cause. He pervades the various states of wakefulness, dreaming, and unconscious deep sleep, and also exists beyond them. So there are three states of consciousness: wakeful, dreaming, and deep sleep. But Lord Narayan is beyond them. By entering the body of every living being as the super soul, he enlivens the body, senses, life, air, and mental activities. And thus all the subtle and gross organs of the body begin their functions. My dear king, know that personality of Godhead to be the Supreme. So this material world is actually dead. There is nothing, there is no consciousness in matter. Only when the Supreme Lord and the living entities, who are both spiritual, they enter this material world, then it becomes alive. And Lord Narayan is the cause of creation, maintenance, and destruction of this material energy. He himself has no prior cause. He actually enlivens even the bodies of the living entities. And he's the Supreme. So in this way, Pippalayan Rishi, he explains the position of the Supreme Lord Narayan. In text 41, King Nimi, he asks the sixth question. O great sages, please speak to us about the process of Karma Yoga. Purified by this process of dedicating one's practical work to the Supreme, a person can quickly free himself from all material activities, even in this life, and thus enjoy pure life on the transcendental platform. In the next verse, he says, once in the past, in the presence of my father, Maharaj Ikshvaku, I placed a similar question before four great sages who were sons of Lord Brahma, but they did not answer my question. Please explain the reason for this. So King Nimi, he is now asking about Karma Yoga, that by this process, one can quickly free himself from material activities. So please explain to me. So the next Navi Yogendra, Sri Avirhotra, he describes that the process of karma, akarma, and vikarma is very difficult to understand. But if one studies Vedas properly, then one can understand this. So in text 44, he gives the understanding of Karma Yoga. See, Karma Yoga means dedicating our activities in the service of the Lord. So because we are so attached to doing activities of sense gratification, this is the first step in the ladder of yoga, where the Vedas say, okay, you are so much attached to doing activities for yourself. So do the same activities, but for pleasure of the Supreme Lord. So in text 44, Sri Avirhotra describes Parokshvado Vedoyam Balanam Anushasanam Karma Mokshaya Karmani Vidatte Yagadam Yatha. Childish and foolish people are attached to materialistic, fruitive activities, although the actual goal of life is to become free from such activities. Therefore, Vedic injunctions indirectly lead one to the path of ultimate liberation by first prescribing fruitive religious activities, just as a father promises his child candy, so the child will take his medicine. So because sometimes children they will not take medicine. So the father says, okay, if you take this candy, if you take the medicine, I'll give you the candy as well. So similarly, the Vedas say that, okay, you are not going to give up material activities. So continue your material activities, but engage them in the service of the Supreme Lord. So for example, we all like to eat various stuff. So the Vedas say that, okay, whatever you eat, first offer to the Supreme Lord. And that is considered prasad, and that will liberate you. But there are some people who will say, no, I want to eat meat. Now the Vedas don't exclude anyone. They want to include them as well in the process of advancement in spiritual life. So the Vedas, they say, okay, you should not eat meat. That injunction is clear. But if you are hellbound, then what you can do is offer a lower animal as a sacrifice. And then on certain days you can eat. So there is no unrestricted mechanical slaughterhouse in Vedic civilization. If someone is hellbound to eat meat, then yes, okay, you can do it on certain days by doing a proper sacrifice. And in that sacrifice, you chant various mantras, you follow Vedic authority, so you're not incurring as much sins. Like, government says on a cigarette pack, smoking kills. And so it is trying to give you the information. But if you are still wanting to ignore, then the government won't stop you. It has given you that information. So similarly, the Vedas, they say that no matter what your sense gratificatory desires are, but at least you open the Vedic books and refer to them. And at least by opening up Vedas, referring to them constantly, you will also understand that this sense gratification is not actually beneficial to me, and I should engage in devotional service. But if you don't open Vedas, if you don't hear from Vedas at all, then you will be simply going on the path to hell. So this is an enticement for the sense gratificatory living entity, just as a father gives a candy to the child, so that at least the child will then accept the medicine. And then very interestingly, Sri Avirhotraji, he explains the process of deity worship in this regard. So if one wants to purify his activities, he should engage in deity worship of the Lord. Then right from the morning till night time, all your activities are around deity worship. So you will wake up in the morning, you will take a bath, and you will do it nicely because you're going to the deities. Then you collect all the ingredients, you worship the deities, you offer food to the deities. That is what you take as prasadam. You clean the temple, invite various devotees, engage in Harinam, Sankirtan, preach. So if one wants to purify his activities, then engaging in deity worship is important. And therefore, Prabhupada opened so many centers around the world. If we base our life around these centers, then we will purify our materialistic activities. Even our ordinary activity of going for job and making money, we will then utilize that money in Krishna's service. So it's very important to get linked to a temple and base our lives around that. And I'm sure all of you devotees, you've put the Manchester temple as the center of your life. And every time there is a festival or something, we all gather together, Friday, Sunday classes, we are there. So our whole lives revolve around the festivals and temple. So there is no chance of doing sense gratification. And that is how one engages in the process of karma yoga, by engaging everything that we do in the service of the Lord and his devotees. So in the next chapter, chapter 4, the whole of chapter 4 is response to one question only. And a very interesting question, where King Nimi in text 1, he says, Shri Rajo Vach, Yani Yani Karmani Yash Yaryeh Swachhand Janmabhi Chakre Karoti Kartava Haristani Bruvantuna. King Nimi said the Supreme Personality of Godhead descends into the material world by his internal potency and according to his own desire. Therefore, please tell us about the various pastimes Lord Hari has performed in the past, is performing now, and will perform in this world in the future in his various incarnations. So King Nimi is very clever here. He's asking about the various incarnations of the Lord. That is like the whole Bhagavatam itself. So a devotee, he just wants to know more and more about the Supreme Lord. So he's asking about various incarnations which have happened in the past, in the current, and in the future as well. So remember, King Nimi, he was at the time of King Ikshvaku. He just said, we previously discussed that in the presence of his father Ikshvaku, he asked about the question of Karma Yoga before Kumara. So that is Treta Yuga. So he wants to know about all the incarnations in all the ages. So Shri Drumila Uvacha, the next Navi Yogendra, he says, Yova Anantasya Gunanantan Anukramishyan Satubala Buddhi Rajamsi Bhume Gadayet Kathanchit Kalena Neva Khilashakti Dhamna. Shri Drumila said, anyone trying to enumerate or describe fully the unlimited qualities of the unlimited Supreme Lord has the intelligence of a foolish child. Even if a great genius could somehow or other, after a time-consuming endeavor, count all the particles of dust on the surface of the earth, such a genius could never count the attractive qualities of the personality of Godhead, who is the reservoir of all potencies. So Shri Drumil very humbly, he says right in the beginning that what you are asking is impossible to answer. No one can describe the qualities or the various incarnations of the Supreme Lord. Someone with great endeavor may count all the particles of dust on the surface of the earth. I'm sure we can't even count the particles of dust in our own fist. But if someone can do that for all over the earth, yet he will find it difficult to enumerate the various qualities of the Supreme Lord. And then Shri Drumil, he gives a synopsis of the various incarnations, like he describes in detail about Naranarayan Rishi. So the pastime of Naranarayan Rishi, that incarnation is described in some detail. And then after that, in synopsis, he describes about the Matsyavatar, Vara Avatar, the Lord saving Gajendra, and Parshuram. Then in the future, he will take birth in Yadu dynasty as Krishna, as Lord Buddha, and then as Lord Kalki. So this is how he describes. In text 22, it is said that even Lord Buddha is described. Vader vimohayati yagya krito arha. So, propounding speculative philosophy, the Lord as Buddha will bewilder the unworthy performers of Vedic sacrifices. So, Shri Drumila, he was able to even describe the future incarnations of Krishna, Buddhadev, and Kalki. Shudran Kalav Kshitibhujo Nyahanishyat Ante. And as Kalki, the Lord will kill all the low-class men posing as rulers at the end of the age of Kalki. So this chapter describes all the incarnations of the Supreme Lord in synopsis, because no one can actually describe all the qualities, all the incarnations of the Supreme. So the 8th question is in chapter 5. So chapter 5 has 8 and 9 questions. So in text 1, King Nimi inquires that, tell me what is the destination of those who for the most part never worship the Supreme Personality of God. So what happens to those who do not worship the Supreme Lord most of their lives, who are unable to quench the material desires, who are not in control of their own selves? So I will read the response by Sri Chamash Prabhu from text 3. A very important verse. Ya esham purusam sakshat Atma Prabhamishwaram na bhajantyavajananti sthana drashta patantida. If any of the members of the 4 varnas and 4 ashramas fail to worship or intentionally disrespect the personality of Godhead, who is the source of their creation, they will fall down from their position into a hellish state of life. So in text 2, he describes the 4 ashram and varnas, and now he says that if any of the members, they intentionally fail to worship or disrespect the Supreme Lord, then they fall down into hellish state of life. Because no matter what one's position is, it is our duty to serve the Supreme Lord. And then in text 13, he says, what is so the question is, what happens to those who don't worship? And Sri Chamasa, he says that these people, they actually go to hellish states of life. In text 13, he says, according to Vedic injunction, when wine is offered in sacrificial ceremonies, it is later to be consumed by smelling and not by drinking. Similarly, sacrificial offering of animals is permitted, but there is no provision for wide-scale animal slaughter. Religious sex life is also permitted, but only in marriage for begetting children, and not for sensuous exploitation of the body. Unfortunately, however, less intelligent materialists cannot understand that their duties in life should be performed purely on spiritual platform. So it's very unfortunate by not worshipping the Supreme Lord and neglecting the Vedic injunctions, people, they fall into hellish states of life. That is their destination. Very unfortunate. And the last question, a very important question, text 19, Sri Rajo Vaj. Kasmin kale sa Bhagavan, kim varna kidrisho nrivi, namna vaken vidhina, pujyate tad ihochatam. In what colors and forms does the Supreme Personality of Godhead appear in each of different ages, and with what names and by what types of regulative principles is the Lord worshipped in human society? So he wants to know the four yugavatars. There are many ways of classifying the various incarnations of the Lord. Gunavatars, Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh, the four yugavatars, each avatar for each of the four yugas. Leela avatar, the Dwadash avatars that are commonly described. The Purush avatar, Mahavishnu, Karnadakshay Vishnu, Garbhodakshay Vishnu, Shirodakshay Vishnu, like that. So here he wants to know about the four yuga avatar, and Shri Karabhajan Muni, he responds, and I will only read about the avatar for Kali Yuga, which is text 32. Krishna Varnam Tasha Krishnam Sango Pangastra Parshadam Yagya Sankirtana Praya Yajanti Hi Suvedasa. In the age of Kali, intelligent persons perform congregational chanting to worship the incarnation of Godhead, who constantly sings the name of Krishna. Although his complexion is not blackish, he is Krishna himself. He is accompanied by his associates, servant, weapon, and confidential companions. Now, the confidential reason of why we are discussing Navi Yogendras is actually this verse. Because this verse describes the incarnation of Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Yugavatar for Kali Yuga. And because we have Gaur Purnima coming up soon, Nataraj Prabhu very cleverly decided to discuss the Navi Yogendras, specifically to discuss this verse. So, how does this verse describe Sri Krishna Chaitanya? So one, this is the Yuga avatar for Kali Yuga. In every Yuga, there is a specific process to worship the Supreme Lord. And in Kali Yuga, because we are residents of Kali Yuga, we should know what is the process and who is the Yuga avatar. Every illness has its particular medicine. Every doctor has his particular favorite way of treating things. So similarly, in Kali Yuga, there is a specific way of advancing in spiritual life. And if we want to progress properly, we should know that way. And this verse summarizes that process. If we understand only this one verse, our life will be successful in Kali Yuga. So who is the Yuga avatar? He is Krishna Varnam. This incarnation will constantly chant the names of Krishna. Vishwa Krishna, although he is Krishna himself, his complexion won't be blackish. Vishwa Krishna means with a luster which is not black. So opposite of black is white or golden. So this incarnation will have a golden complexion, and he will constantly chant the names of Krishna, which is Sri Krishna Chaitanya. Now you may say, okay, Prabhuji, the word of Sri Krishna Chaitanya is not mentioned here. Well, in Vedic texts, that is how they indicate. Even in the previous verses, the names of Lord Buddha and Kalki were not mentioned. But the qualities are mentioned, and by those qualities, one can understand that this is the Supreme Lord. Also, other qualities have been given. He will come with his Sa-anga, with his associates, Upa-anga, servitors, Astra, weapon. So you may say, what is the weapon of Sri Krishna Chaitanya? So the weapon of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is chanting of the holy names. Parshadam, with his confidential companions. And Yagne Sankirtana Praya, he will chiefly propound the chanting of the holy names. Yajanti hi Sumedasa. Sumedasa means intelligent people who have very fine intelligence, who are extremely intelligent in Kali Yuga. They will worship this particular incarnation. And Prabhupada, he gives quotations from Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, from Jiva Goswami in Krama Sandarbha he has described. And then there is also a quotation from Shlok Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya and then from Vishnu Sahasranam in the Mahabharat, Dana Dharma Parva. Suvarno Varno Hemango Varangash Chandana Gadi Sannyasa Krit Shamashanto Nishtha Shanti Parayana. That in his later pastimes he accepts the sannyas order. So there are various quotations in different scriptures where the incarnation of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is described. In Kali Yuga, we specifically have to worship the Yuga avatar for this age, which is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he is giving a very sublime process of Sankirtana Yajna, of congregationally chanting the holy names. You know, we all individually chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra as ordered by Srila Prabhupada. When we take initiation, we chant the holy names of the Lord, purify ourselves. And the actual Yuga Dharma is then to come together and chant the holy names of the Lord. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Last month when I was giving a class on Chaitanya Leela, the confidential and external reasons, external and internal reasons of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance, is one of the reasons that he's appeared is to propound the chanting of the holy name, because this is the Yuga Dharma. Harer Nam, Harer Nameva Kevalam, Kalau Nasteva 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 Gatirana. In the Upanishads, it is mentioned that one should chant the names of the Krishna. But that is the only remedy for this age. There is no other process which is recommended. Meditation, deity worship, fire sacrifices, they are not actually possible in this age. All we have to do is come together. In one instruction of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to the residents of Navadvip before taking sannyas, he says, all of you come together in groups of, few people, 5 people, 10 people, whatever numbers, sit together, clap, or if you have musical instruments, play them, simply clap and chant Hare Krishna. That is all what is needed. It cannot get more simple than this. That in Kali Yuga, all you have to do is come together, chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And this is the remedy for this. By following this, you will cross over Maya, you will cross over all the miseries of your life. You will actually attain the highest, which is Krishna Prem, love of God. It cannot get simpler than this. And to preach this principle, Krishna himself comes as a devotee. He wants to taste the nectar of chanting his holy names himself. So therefore, Krishna Varnam, he himself is chanting his holy names. Krishna, who is Satchidananda Vigraha, who is Rasamaya, who is the reservoir of all rasas, of all mellows, of all pleasures, people take to his shelter to gain freedom from all miseries. But when he wants to experience pleasure, then he himself comes as his devotee and chants his holy names. If we analyze the life of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he would constantly engage in Harinam Sankirtan. I'm just reading about his sannyas Leela pastime in Chaitanya Bhagavad. Before taking sannyas, during the ceremony of sannyas, and after the ceremony of sannyas, Mahaprabhu is constantly doing Harinam Sankirtan with his devotees, constantly shedding tears and embracing everyone. All of them are chanting the Hare Krishna. So he is teaching personally that in this age, if we want to progress, we have to chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra collectively, come together and engage in Harinam Sankirtan. I'm sincerely hoping that when the temple reopens, and I'm hoping it opens very soon enough, we should all have some ecstatic kirtans where we all come together and chant Hare Krishna together in great joy, in great jubilation. That is the process. And to establish that, Krishna himself comes as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he himself is enjoying the chanting of the holy name. So, my dear devotees, if you have any tinge of attachment to any other process, just give that up. Just simply come together and chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram. And then, everything else is accomplished. Don't need to do anything else separate. So in this life, we have only two missions, or actually only one mission, that we worship Sri Krishna Chaitanya by chanting Hare Krishna. That is all that is needed. So Karabhajan Muni, he explains this to King Nimi. And then King Nimi, he is greatly pleased. In text 43, it is said, having thus heard the signs of devotional service, Nimi, the king of Mithila, felt extremely satisfied, and along with the sacrificial priest offered respectful worship to the sagacious sons of Jayanti. And then, text 44, the perfect sages then disappeared before the eyes of everyone. King Nimi faithfully practiced the principle of spiritual life he had learned from them, and thus he achieved the supreme goal of life. O greatly fortunate Vasudev, so Narad Muni is telling Vasudev, simply apply with faith these principles of devotional service which you have heard, and thus being free from material association, you will attain the supreme. So Shukdev Goswami, he gives a benediction in the final verse of this chapter, 11.552. Itihasam imam punyam dharayedhyah samahit savidhuyeha shamalam brahma bhuyaya kalpate. Anyone who meditates on this pious historical narration with fixed attention will purify himself of all contamination in this very life and thus achieve the highest spiritual perfection. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Navi Yogendras ki jai, Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nidai Gaur Prem.
Hare Bo.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu. That was simply wonderful. Simply wonderful. So there, I had a few realizations while hearing this lecture. I thought I would share first and then ask other devotees if they have anything they can share also. The first thing that I realized was that, see, when Vasudev asked Narada Muni, he went back and he's quoting this incident, this discussion between Nimi and Navi Yogendras. So this is proper parampara. So disciplic succession means you hear from the acharyas and you repeat. That's what I thought, that's what Prabhupada is also doing. Basically what Prabhupada is doing, everything is, from the acharyas books, he had put everything in his purports. So that's how acharyas, they do that. Secondly, this is so humble, like even Vasudeva was asking question. His own father is Krishna. He's asking, is trying to inquire from Narada Muni. Means the Lord is pleased when we actually submissive to the devotees of the Lord. And that's what Nimi is also doing. Nimi is also great personality. Yes, but yet he's trying to inquire from the Navi Yogendras. So how devotees, he finds opportunity. Whenever there is an opportunity, he inquires. And luckily, we have books to open. That's it, isn't it? We have Srila Prabhupada in the form of his Bhagavatam. Prabhupada is there in the form of Bhagavatam, in the form of Bhagavad Gita. So we can open and read the books Prabhupada, and that way we are actually inquiring Prabhupada. We are actually gaining knowledge from Prabhupada. And also I have one other thing I just wanted to mention was that so many of these verses time and again quoted by Prabhupada, isn't it? Not many devotees actually know where they are from. This Bhakti Pareshan Bhava, this verse Prabhupada quoted time and again. That is from Nimi, this Navi Yogendras. And the other verse also that Tasmat Gurum Prapadyeta. Prabhupada actually every time he quoted that verse, surrendering to Guru, and also the classification of three types of devotees.
Yes.
That was mentioned, and the famous Krishna Varnam Tvisha Krishnam. We talked about now that was relating to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. That was spoken by Karabhajan. So number of important verses actually are connected to these 9 Yogendras, and that are quoted by Prabhupada time and again in his purports in various books, in all the books that he had written. Thank you so much, Prabhu, for taking time to narrate this in a short span and in a nice way. I really appreciate your time and effort for doing so wonderful job. Thank you. Anybody has any comments or any questions they want to ask Deebandhu Prabhu? Okay, so Lalita Preeti has a question here. You want to come and say?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, thank you very much for the nice class. Just I was looking at the, what is the question? 8th question, Chamasa Muni answered. What happens to the one who never worship the Lord? And you mentioned about they fall down to the hellish planets in 3, and then went to 13. And in Vedic ceremonies, wine smelling is allowed. Is that what? Did I read correctly?
Yeah.
Yes, Mataji. So that is how Sri Chamas Muni explains that. Actually, because of time constraints, I haven't been able to describe in details. But if you get time, then please read the whole answer, because when the followers of various varnas and ashramas, they do not worship the Supreme Lord and just engage in sense gratification, they even lose the meaning of the Vedas. They may read the Vedas, but they may not understand it. They become so blinded by sense gratification. And therefore, King Nimi is asking, what is the destination for these people? And the destination is not good at all. So, as devotees, sometimes we understand about Krishna, but we still engage in sense gratification. So therefore, the practical application I consider for myself is I should be very careful by reading these sections, that it's sometimes easy to put on a tilak and dress as a devotee and be called a devotee. But actually, in my personal life, am I following the principles of devotional service, or am I just a sense gratifier with a devotional attire? So this section deals with that. And why go near alcohol at all if you don't want to drink and just smell that? Don't even smell it. One can get more intoxication by drinking Charnamrit after a Janmashtami festival.
Okay.
Okay, Prabhu, thank you.
Hare Krishna. There are a number of comments here. So appreciating the class. So thank you, devotees, for those comments. And welcome Tota Gopinath Prabhu, all the way from Lithuania. Wonderful. He's always smiling. Always smiling.
Hare Krishna. Dearest devotees, I would like to say that actually I'm very, very happy to rejoin you again. Manchester will always be in my heart. And actually, thank you, Prabhu, for the class, and the Guru Nataraj for administrating everything, my God brothers, my God sisters. I just wanted to actually get a few insights of actually what you were speaking, but from my opinion, is just straight from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu down to Prabhupada, down to us. It was all about the pure mercy. And actually, as my Gurudev says also, we only our only one qualification is just about the mercy of Guru Maharaj, and actually it's a Prabhupada. If not Prabhupada, I would never have in my life Gurudev. I would never have in my life association with the devotees and the knowledge, which actually helps me a lot in daily life, and actually just gives me the purpose, the main purpose and the main goal in my life. So basically, and the association with the devotees, which is the basic of everything. So thanks again for giving me the opportunity to talk and to say a few words. And hopefully the coronavirus is going to end. Of course, it's going to end, and I will just fly over to Manchester to do some Sankirtanam.